Alright, audio check 1 2 1 2, audio check 1 2. Okay. Think we're doing good, finally. Took a little bit. Sorry for the delay, folks. I don't know what's up today, but it feels like I'm getting harangued on all fronts. But I think I'm finally in a place where I can actually sit down, get to work, and be ready. So, thank you all so much for your patience. I genuinely appreciate you. It means the world. Good morning, Mossy. Or afternoon, Mossy. I believe it's afternoon and evening for you over there in the UK. Alright. Just finally getting off the ground. Whew! Alright. So, without further ado, I'm the last Omnitect, your favorite robot American, and welcome to our next section, not of Omni Plays, but Omni Draws. Gentry DeLon Ain't No Fascist, a Helldivers 2 fan comic. Been working on this for quite some time, and I'm pretty excited to be back, so we're gonna pop right into it. I'm just opening some documents, and I better save the one I've got open here. You guys can't take a look at this yet. No, no, no. Much too good for children. Nick! Hey, buddy! Yeah, just after 6 p.m. Nice. Good to see you, Nick. And Coyote, thank you so much. Thank you guys all so much for joining in. I appreciate you guys. We're still a tiny channel, so all the energy really does help so much. Alright, I'm just making sure that I'm all checked out. We're good. On Do Not Disturb, I can close Discord. Oh, thank God. Alright. So, I hope you're all doing well today. I've been thinking about what I'm going to draw today and what have you, and it appears as though, of course, now my phone is going to start throwing alerts at me the second I go live. There we go. So today I've been debating what I'm going to draw, how I'm going to draw it, and yes, I'm aware that right now you guys can't see anything on the screen. Trust me, I'm getting it out. I'm getting it done. I just need to actually get open the thing I want to get. So, let me just pop that open, and also get some planetary references rolling, as I really don't have anything so far drawn for a couple of these places. So I'm just going to open this up, and like that. Promise no food pics today. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. They looked delicious. They looked truly delicious. We'll just pop on to our little art frame here, but very quickly. Hey, cool. Okay. Camera's working. We're in a great place. So, hey folks. I wanted to take a brief little second to talk about kind of everything that's been going on, and wonder why it is that my camera is suddenly out of focus. I'm here. There you go. Weird, the range on this thing just decides it's going to have issues. So I'm doing great. 25% of my face is partially numb. I'm so sorry. That's not fun. That's not fun. So today's been kind of chaotic, and I'm going to try to avoid dropping too much on you guys right now, because we're here for art streams and chill. Not here for real-life drama and politics. Today in the United States is September 11th, which, depending on who you ask, is either a very solemn holiday or a day most people seem to have forgotten at this point. My family is largely a bunch of New Yorkers, and so for them, September 11th kind of hit pretty square on the beam. And thankfully, I lost nobody. But every year, this time of year makes me reflect on a lot of the social anxieties and a lot of the political stresses and everything about what's going on in the world. And I will say, after many years of ruminating and worrying and thinking about it, after a lot of calling around and organizing this morning, and I was doing a lot of that this morning, if I can give anybody any advice in regards to how to deal with everything that's going on, I would say to remember that, one, nothing's permanent, everything swings back and forth, dark days don't stay forever, and more importantly, you can always do something to try to help. I promise you you can, even if it's small. You don't need to go out there and personally drive a stake through fascism's heart. But if you're anxious, worried, and you're not sure what to do, talk with your friends, connect with them, build community amongst your actual hometown and your immediate area with people you care about and can trust, and try to help people where you can. I'm not paid in any way, shape, or form at all by the non-violent Medicaid Army. I'm not at all, but I work with them. So if you're anxious or nervous and you're not sure that you feel like you can commit to something, and you might want to do something a little more permanent and real than just going out and marching, which, by the way, marches are good, but they're the start of the political journey. If they're the only thing you're doing, they're not doing much. Reach out to these guys. See if you have a local chapter near you. I promise you they're on the level, and they're folks I've worked with for a while. So I think that's about all the political brouhaha we're going to talk about right now. We're going to get into the actual art today. And I'm not going to lie, like I said, today is a very fuzzy kind of day for me. So I appreciate your patience. But without any further ado, it's art time, baby. It's art time, baby! So we're going to get right to it. I've started drawing a little bit of the Meridia, of Meridia itself in Helldivers for a while. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the plot and story of Helldivers, don't worry, it's been going on for a year, it's kind of nuts. But long and short, Meridia is... Meridia is an interesting time. Meridia was a planet, and then it got blown up. And then it turned into a black hole. And then a bunch of maniacs began piling that black hole towards Earth. And by maniacs, I mean a bunch of squid people. And so, yeah, it's like 8 different levels of hell. Let's see. Yeah, there's some kind of insane stuff going on in Helldivers when it comes to Meridia. There's a whole, like, video on this that I haven't watched, and one day I might, if I actually watch it all the way through and make sure it's good. Music needs to be touched down. Thank you, I appreciate you. Hopefully that helps a little better. This should pass, so it's kind of requiring me. Thank you for letting me know, Mossy. Meridia was a colony in Super Earth's territories. It then rose, got overwhelmed by Terminids after they deployed what was referred to as the Terminid Control System, or TCS. Think of it as like a giant... God, what would we call it? Like a roach bomb, I guess? It's a bug bomb. It's a giant bug bomb. They deployed hundreds of these things all across the frontier as a test to try to suppress the Terminids, who are a bunch of, if you're not familiar with these guys, let me just pop this open over here. You guys can't see what's going on that screen, because that's a lot of hidden stuff you're not allowed to see yet. And I don't want you to get a peek at it. But Terminids, if I can open this thing up, should be the... Terminids. The big buggos! We're all familiar with the big buggos. So yes, the Terminids have been slowly, like, growing and spreading, and in this period there's like an explosion of them. So they used these giant bug bombs to try to suppress the Terminid population in the region. And it worked for a while. Killed 99.99% of them. But then anyone who's familiar with how roaches and ants work, when you bug bomb them, the ones you kill aren't the ones you worry about. It's the ones who become resistant to the poison. And those breed. And now your bug bomb does nothing. In Helldivers, it turned out to be even worse. Turns out the Terminid Control System used a kind of mutagen-based poison, which is a very fun way of saying the ooze from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, basically. They used a thing that's designed to cause your DNA to warp. On a creature that isn't super adaptive, that just kills you. That would just give you cancer and you die. Or it causes you to have metabolic failure. Symptoms ranging from exposure to poison gas all the way to radiation poisoning and systemic collapse. Terminids, however, breed en masse at great speed and share a lot of similarities with modern Earth insects, which means they adapt around that shit very quickly. And so this mutagen accelerated their evolution, and in fact made them more dangerous, to the point where the Helldivers eventually had to use something called dark fluid, which is basically hyper-compressed dark matter, as far as I can tell, to create a singularity in the heart of Meridia, collapsing it and obliterating it, killing all the bugs. At least that's what they thought. Well, turns out when you open a giant black hole, there's consequences. So the black hole, and I believe I have the art of it. Here we go, yes. So the black hole initially was a stable single point. Nothing too insane, horrifying to look at, but it was a thing. And then it began moving. And it turns out it was used as a weapon by the Illuminate, another alien species in the galaxy that humanity kind of did terrible shit to. Like every other species in the galaxy, humanity is hilariously belligerent in Helldivers. We exiled them from the galaxy, and they used this black hole as a portal to come back. But before they did, they basically grabbed control of it and basically shot it straight at Super Earth, and literally through the intersecting orbits of several dozen other systems. It was bad. Well, at least half a dozen. Half a dozen other systems. I think it was 5 or 6 systems that got killed by the black hole. Before finally, we stopped it using a lot of crazy super science and an extended campaign of violence, and then a giant invasion fleet came out of it. So long and short, Meridia went from being a prosperous jungle colony to literally a roving disaster in less than a couple of months, really. The people of Meridia had, like, anyone who's from Meridia had nightmares, I'm sure, for years about their world going from a perfectly fine world to a bug-infested nightmare to a largely, like, cleansed, barren world from the TCS, to then an even worse bug nightmare, to a black hole, to then going from everything on that planet that was once theirs being destroyed, now becoming a cudgel of terror destroying other systems. It'd be like if I saw my childhood house on wheels filled with dynamite hurtling in an orphanage. It is not a good day. And so Meridia's kind of infamous now in Helldivers as this thing that a lot of people, you guys saw a little bit of that, you're not allowed to see that comic, wink. It's pretty much infamous. But we don't see much of Meridia outside of the black hole, outside of when the Terminids obliterated it, outside of when Super Earth kicked its teeth in and then it got turned into a cruise missile. I wanted to draw some of Meridia before that. And so here we are on New Chimgan, which is a Frontier Rim colony on Meridia in the Orion sector. I started doodling this a few months back, and I kind of like the idea of doodling a little bit more. We're going to try something a little different this time, though. So we're going to just go to a brand new page. We're going to start fresh, because I want to do a little bit of environmental art here. So let's zoom in as best as we can. I'm just going to call this environmental art. So first things first, we got to get ourselves a nice gesso. Beautiful. We're not even going to call this environmental art. This is going to be environmental sketches. And today I'm going to do something I haven't done, I think, with you guys ever, which is work completely in grayscale. Because grayscale is a phenomenal tool. Those of you who are unfamiliar with what grayscale means, okay, I'm going to take a moment to explain. So, when people draw and they sketch, usually they use graphite and pencil. You're all familiar with graphite and pencil sketches, even if you're not a sketch artist, you've seen people draw like that. Usually they'll use some combination of lead and paper to create what we would refer to as volume. If you're wondering what volume is what gives shapes mass. So my outline, which really isn't very visible, would be the thing that actually defines my shape. But volume, that's the stuff that gives you meat, baby. That's what gives you actual, like, width and weight and heft to you. Grayscale does all of that and basically equates color purely to light and dark and volume without any use of color. So we're going to avoid that almost entirely today and just go with the actual, like, sketch in a grayscale. So I'm going to start this off with environmental. We'll say, like, I kind of want to do a windmill. We'll do this. Small colony fixtures. And then below that, we're going to do a little windmill. Alright. So I'm literally just going to sort of start sketching out. And this is really just to give me an idea of how I want to draw things. Super Earth and its art style, generally speaking, in Helldivers, has this kind of modernist, very well-designed futurist ideology, or futurist imagery. It's very much built in the same way of like a lot of popular science magazine style art, which is very much European-centric, almost near brutalist, smooth, flowing, sterile curve stuff. Which works pretty well, for the most part, for their design ethos, because Super Earth is a fascist society. It is an autocratic, not pleasant place to live. And I know, I can practically hear some of you guys out there shouting, you know, that's not democratic. You're right. I'm not a Super Earth apologist, in case the webcomic's name didn't give it away already. So we're going to work a little bit with the designs that we've currently got here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of sketching. I want these structures to feel somewhere between the super advanced technology of Super Earth, as you and I are familiar with it, and keep sort of its same slightly blocky design language. But also, I want it to feel a little bit more rustic. And in keeping with the aesthetic we've already established for this place. I'm actually going to lower this a little bit more. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. Then I'm just going to sort of take this, pull that up. Because at the moment, Meridia is technically a world that had, like, larger cities and stuff on it, but for the most part, Meridia was known for its farming of terminids. So it's kind of, in my mind, a little bit like large chunks of, like, Wisconsin or Vermont, where it's very much known for being farmland, primarily. Okay, so now we're going to take this. And I'm just going to very quickly use a shape just to make things easy for me. Good enough. It's going to be 430. It always does that, where, like, whenever I pull back, it just sort of lets it go. There we go. And 430. I want it to be as even as possible. Oh, you're killing me with this thing. Fine, 431. We'll do it that way. Okay, we need to be a little larger. Let's take that and expand it a little more. Beautiful. That feels a little more like in keeping with the size and scope of what we'd want for a windmill. Okay, cool. So we're going to go with that. Now, I like the idea of the windmill. There's one particular windmill I always think about in science fiction. And I'm sure you guys have probably seen it for those of you who ever played Halo 3. And that would be the map Zanzibar. Anyone who's ever played any Halo multiplayer at all, you'll be familiar with Zanzibar, because Zanzibar has a very distinctive aesthetic to it. Let's see if I can find a good picture of the windmill. I guess that will do. Come on. I really wish they had it in like a scale that wasn't infinitesimally tiny. There we go. Let's see. Tools, size, large. Sure, that'll do. Okay, finally found an image that isn't like 1080p ultra tiny. Apparently, still tiny, but manageable. So this is Zanzibar. Basically, this is this giant enclosed windmill, which is balanced on a magnetic rail, which rotates around and the wind moves it. I always liked the fact that the windmill was built into the, like, actual structure. Mechanically speaking, it makes no sense. I'm just gonna put that out there. The thing is not very good at absorbing wind energy when it's that close to the ground. Windmills can be huge, but they're not designed to be heavy. And so, as a result, this is the reason why when windmills have impacts, it's actually not a good thing. Oftentimes they need to check to make sure that they're okay. They're built to handle a certain degree of impact. But there is a point where, like, if a human were to be flung in a windmill and hit one of the fans, one of the rotors, they would probably want to, like, at least try to power it down safely and inspect it before they turned it back on again. Because you're something that big spinning at those speeds, you get real serious forces. So I like the idea of a windmill that's been, like, encased. But we're not going to do quite the same thing Zanzibar did. Instead, we're going to do it on a much smaller scale. So we're just going to save this. Ooh, oh, hold on. It's not quite work. Oh, I see what's happening. There we go. Now we can go. Okay. So I'm going to just take this. And I'm literally just going to sketch out the ring. I don't need it to be perfect. This is, after all, more of a study than anything else. Just sort of give me ideas for, like, future terrain. But wind, as a power source, is a very interesting power source. It provides you with a pretty steady environmental, like, power, but one that is very dependent on your environment and seasons. So, in this case, I like the idea of windmills like this being on, like, higher altitudes, stuff like that, smaller little areas in the middle of nowhere. And it's possible it might even be more of a sensor kind of thing. There we go. Okay, we're just going to take that, put that in there, and I'm just going to have a very simple fan. And we're going to literally just take that design. I'm going to go with 3 blades here, because it feels like a pretty good compromise on reality. And then down here, we'd have that blade coming down a little bit. Cool. We might even do 3 times the number. Let's do it twice. Let's do twice the number of those blades. A little further over. This will give us slightly more concise and clear windmill identity. And also, I can just sort of take this a little bit, cut it up, move it to where it'll feel more appropriate. rotate that again. A little higher up. Give it a little bit more of a twist. And we're going to expand that out a tad. And we're going to do it one more time. Because it doesn't need to be perfect. This isn't a perfectly balanced windmill. There's a lot to be desired about its design. But for now, it'll do. So now we take that. Kind of want to take it actually and replace the other blade here. If I can. Should be able to. There we are. Yeah, we're just going to twist it a little more so it's a little more even. Beautiful. And then one more over here. And I'm going to do that to this blade. Cool. So I can now go on the underside. Sort of clean this shape up a little bit. Cool, it almost looks like a desk fan, and I'm kind of down with that. That works for me. That actually works pretty well for me. Okay, so we've got this little desk fan thing here. We're just going to merge these down. And now we're going to get to the actual, like, blocking out of it. Alright, we're going to do this with values, so I'm going to put this at 25. And we're going to start just clocking this up. Get the actual shapes in here, filled in with color, or in this case with shading. Using 25% opacity on a pure black brush, which works for me. Basically, this is the equivalent of sketching with some kind of pencil, very lightly. And I can always go back over it with something sharper and harsher. And I feel like we can put like some sort of capacitors or something over here. Super Earth has like this very switchboard kind of capacitor look that I've always really dug. With this very specific aesthetic to it. Okay, and then over here we can just have a simple door going in. Actually don't even need the top to that door, because we have the top of that shed. We can have some windows, roughly eye level. And we're going to try our hand at getting some rough sketching in now. %, up here. Alright, I'm going to fill in the windmill here. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It's a sketch. I say this largely also for my benefit, too. So if this sounds like I'm saying it a lot, I am. I'm reminding myself constantly that I'm sketching. It doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. So let's keep going with this. Let's get some more doodles here. We're going to start working on some shapes now, and some shape language. So that's going to be me going over and hitting up areas that are a little bit different than the rest. where light would fall differently. Okay, so 25%. And by not including something in that layer, it's a great way to denote where light falls, which is very helpful. Here we are. Just getting some more industrial shapes in there. Something real simple. Okay. Now let's start adding in the parts where things are going to get like really, really dark because there's a lot of shadow on there. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of simple like doors and stuff that go in. Alright, let's choose a light source. I'm going to choose it from this direction, just for the fun of it. Okay, so, if that's the case then, we're going to just hit these parts of the blades. And we're just going to do a little bit of it darker parts there. Let's see, as far as Super Earth buildings, they usually have like these sort of thin mold lines along here. Oftentimes they have sort of like little they have like these little jockey boxes sticking off the sides. And they're very much made to be like prefabs. Almost everything they use is prefabricated, so we're just gonna go with that. Lots of like simple mold lines and structural lines. Got ourselves a couple more jockey boxes here off the edge. Okay, and then we get on the far side where the shadow will be darkest. Okay, cool. That works. So we got ourselves a very simple windmill here, nothing too extreme. I feel like I want to have at least an antenna or something coming off the side. Some kind of weather uplink. And what happens when this thing comes across some sort of, like, intense weather? How do they lock it down? And I feel the solution is the same as we use in the real world. Anti-lock brakes. Anti-lock brakes are a wonderful tool. Also, I'm going to kind of square off the exterior of this thing a little bit. we're going to play around with that. The top will be still rounded, but I want the bottom to be a little more squared. There we go. There we are. So we have these anti-lock brakes that are going to click on. I feel like they're probably just integrated onto the side here. Just ready to drop in at a moment's notice to lock the blades. Okay, cool. So there we go. We got a very quick, simple design here. And likely this is some kind of relay station, so here we go. Just gonna add a little bit more detail in. And all this stuff you're eventually gonna see in the comic. If not this exact design, you'll see something very similar to it in a couple of weeks, I'm sure. Since we are probably gonna be heading to Meridia sooner rather than later. So we'll have ourselves a little power station bit up here. Kind of like the idea of there being like a little upper window view place. And then we'll have our power lines sort of coming off from there. And they sort of snake up a pole. Which we do know Super Earth uses archaic technology because they refuse to advance, so this doesn't feel too off. So I'm just going to use an old-fashioned transmission tower, but just much, much smaller. And we're just going to have these little transmission cuffs on there. These capacitors, they're designed to take a lot of shock force just in case something happens. Okay, and then from there, we just sort of carry it off into the distance. Actually, going to hold on. We're just going to copy this. Save myself a lot of issues. Copy, paste. That'll do. So we're looking pretty good so far in terms of our aesthetic here. And again, if anybody's got any questions or wants to engage, please feel free. I promise I won't bite your head off. I'm a pretty chill dude for the most part. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, then we're just going to take this. We're going to block this off at the bottom. Make sure that the arc is even between the two of them. There we go. Okay, so we got ourselves a little Super Earth Meridian style like structure. So this would be a frontier. I guess technically this would fall under the Ministry of Expansion. I'm pretty sure. So that'd be the Mo. Hold on, let me open the faction map. Okay, so yeah, Ministry of Expansion would be probably what this falls under. Because I know that there's also the Ministry of... Hold on. Helldivers 2, Ministries... Here we go. So the Ministry of Unity, which I think is specifically the Ministry of, you know, the Gestapo, basically. Oh, nice. They have this lovely little thing. It's perfect for this. We're just going to take this and move this over here. The ministries. The many ministries. So the Ministry of Intelligence, unconfirmed. I suspect that's because the Ministry of Intelligence technically falls under the Ministry of Truth and the Ministry of Unity, which is domestic security, law enforcement, and information control and surveillance. So Ministry of Truth feels like the Ministry of Intelligence is the same thing. So Office for Defense, Office for Research and Development, Office... Here we go. Ministry of Humanity, Office for Administration and Civil Resources. The Ministry of Expansion is Colonial Management, Resource Extraction, and Terraforming. So somewhere between the Ministry of Humanity and the Ministry of Expansion is where we probably want this to fall. Give or take. So if that's the case, then that'll keep things relatively easy. I feel like I want to have like a little sign or something out front. Literally just like a, you know, trespassers will be shot kind of dealy. Okay, cool. So we got ourselves a little Ministry of Earth windmill. Let's get ourselves a couple other things. Also, I can get rid of this ellipse, too. If I turn this back up to full, this should look complete. It is. Cool. We're good. So let's scroll down a little bit. I kind of want to do a Terminid farm. We haven't seen Terminid farms ever in Helldivers. I don't believe we have. Maybe in Helldivers 1? Helldivers 1... Terminid pen, or bug pen. Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything for that yet. Someone that works on them for a living, I appreciate the power poles. Thank you, I appreciate you. When I was in Central Florida, my grandparents lived right near a major transmission line. And so the power poles were one of those things that always very much, like, attracted my attention. They're super rugged things, and they're made to be incredibly durable. Of course, these aren't, like, the full-scale, like, cross-continental transmission lines that we have running through a lot of the country. They weren't quite that big, but they were still huge. They took me... When I was a kid, I used to run between, like, underneath them, run from one wire to the other, and those things are, like, 20, 30 feet apart. And they're, like, the biggest transmission poles with, like, dozens of wires running through them, all with cities worth of power coursing through them. Literally, you can feel the buzz when you work near them, or you live near them. It's not as bad, like, they don't build within a certain radius precisely because of that. I'm a distribution guy, so wooden poles for me, climbing spikes and everything. That's a lot more of what I see here up in Vermont. The mountainous terrain really doesn't make transmission poles very easy to establish, and whenever they do have transmission, they tend to have, like, huge swaths of the mountains that they have to cut through. Like, they'll actually... It's almost like someone takes... God. I'll see if I can find a picture. There's, like, a couple of them where the transmission lines literally... They'll take a mountainside, and it's like someone took a... Like, someone took a trimmer or a shaver, and they'll just buzz the forest up the top of a mountain. And it's very funny. It's very funny to look at. I'm not sure if I'm going to have anyone has any good pictures of it, but I have seen so many in my area where they literally just have these rolling green mountainsides loaded up with trees, and then like this just one part where it looks like the barber slipped and just fucking buzzed it all through. But those are rare. The majority of them are the poles you're describing, the wooden distribution poles. We have those all over. Mostly because they're fortified against, like, avalanche and stuff. So, a lot of them have, like, almost an A-frame built onto them. Just to make sure they don't get blown over by snow or wind or water. Just a bald spot around the pylon. Yeah. In this case, here in the US, they have a bald spot following the entire line. So if they have 2 rows of transmission lines, the whole thing is bald. Here, I found something. This is a very small example, but this is pretty good in terms of like what it looks like. That, where it's just like this the whole way along. They don't want anything anywhere near those transmission lines. They're really aggressive about it. So I felt like, you know, it's a power station. Now granted, I don't have capacitors here. I don't have proper pylons. I don't have, like, this isn't a full distribution station by our standards, because it's Super Earth and they have advanced technology. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. They just sort of, all that's been confined to the interior of this building, or it's subterranean. Maybe they have some kind of like some sort of junction box under here that they just don't let people inside. That might be a good solution for it. So this thing in the back. And actually, now that I think about it, I think I have seen where they have, like, capacitors and stuff. I'm not going to complicate it too much. I'm going to keep it easy. I'm just going to have a little barbed wire fence going through here, which runs behind, so we can see it goes back pretty far. It'll probably peek out the other side. We're just going to have our single line wire fence over the top. We're all familiar with these kind of barbed wire fences. The ones that are put up by municipals, they're not like military grade, but they're probably the same exact kind of fence used by the Army Corps of Engineers. Then they just sort of throw a nest of razor wire over the top to keep people from climbing over it and finding what's the phrase? Fucking around and finding out? Basically that. They just don't want folks to fuck around and find out. Because every once in a while, where there's barbed wire, there's a good reason for it. Don't screw around with power lines, folks. Just great way to die. Fantastically horrific way to get killed. And I realize at this point I'm just going all in on the transmission here. Have a couple more of these. And these capacitor banks. And mind you, I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm not particularly privy to every detail of how these things work, or even all the time what they're for, but as an artist, I know what looks right. Just gotta mimic those shapes, baby. I'll do the same thing back here to sort of fill that out. And by doing this at 25%, it gives us this sort of almost ghostly distant image, which is what we're going for here. Because the further things are away from the front of an image, the more they fade into the background. There we go. Okay. Let's see, wax strip lines, yeah. And a little bit of showing off, I can work on the underground low voltage cables as well as the overhead. Don't forget, LV here is 230 and 400 volt. That is very fair. That is very fair. That's very cool. I didn't know that you worked on power lines. That's really cool. I'm not gonna lie, linemen always are one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, that kind of looks like it's a little bit fun. I'm sure the anxiety of working with something like that probably outweighs the fun, and the fact that also, you know, it's a job. And after a while, even the most fun job is still a job. It's a lot less fun when you have to get up the ass crack of dawn to work on something, or work late into the night. And I know the climbing pythons would terrify me a little bit. I always wanted to do tree climbing and stuff with pythons, but I don't know. There's a nervousness there that I always felt. Okay, let's drag you down here. Okay, so what are we going to do next? We're going to do a Terminid farm. Terminid farm. We'll call it a Terminid barn. Let's see, you get used to it. You also get used to working live, as 90% of the time I work live. That makes sense. I know that it's not like they're going to shut down the lines every time they need to do basic maintenance. That's the kind of thing that gets people really pissed off. So I'm going to do something fun here. When I was working at SeaWorld for a while, and before we get any further on this, let me just take a moment. I do not endorse what SeaWorld did to all the animals and stuff there. In fact, actually, for the most part, everyone who worked at SeaWorld is horrified by how SeaWorld was made. And the ones that are still there are the ones who are trying to do right by animals that can't be released. Not giving a pass to SeaWorld, giving a pass to the incredibly passionate folks who are there entirely for the benefit of the animals, and that goes pretty far down the line. I can't say anything about the marketing department, but I can absolutely say almost everyone involved in sanitation, animal care, engineering, and enclosure are all actually pretty solid folks that are stuck with an impossible job of making an animal with a normally many kilometers wide roaming range as comfortable as humanly possible in a significantly smaller environment. Same thing with a lot of zoos that are doing the same thing. A lot of those places were established long before we have modern standards of animal care and respect, and they are populated by people who are doing their best to take care of those animals in spite of the conditions they were left. So, just gonna say that. So as someone who worked for SeaWorld, and I worked, for the record, as an artist there. I was actually a commission artist, technically a contractor working on SeaWorld's grounds for another company that sent me there. I was a portrait artist, and so I got to hang out near a number of the enclosures, namely the smaller ones, the ones for animals that are significantly less problematic. Lots of fish tanks for these smaller, more reef-born tropical fish, but also I was near the rays, and in addition to the rays, there was also it's like one more. I guess I was near the manatee enclosure, one of the manatee enclosures, which is pretty decent. And they have this very thick, heavily built up concrete structure around them. Almost always. Because there's a risk. There's always a risk when you're working with live animals that something might come up and grab you. And even if the animal is completely harmless normally, like, as an example, manatees basically eat lettuce. they eat dillweed and duckweed at the bottom of the water. Like, literally, they have teeth like grinders and a nose like a little snoot, so they can hoover up whatever's on the bottom. It's like a sponge. They literally scoop it up. So they do not have the teeth for hurting you. But even a manatee is incredibly strong, compared to us anyway. The average manatee is like between 800 to like 1,200 pounds American, which, hold on, let me do this in metric. So, this would be pounds to, I guess this would be kilograms. So we're looking at between about 400 kilograms to 450 kilograms, roughly. They're big. And these, even animals as gentle as manatees, if one of them gets a wild hair and decides to grab you and gently pull you under, for them it might be playing. And manatees, as far as I know, have never done this. Dolphins, on the other hand, have. Dolphins and orcas have done this, where an animal, as gentle as it might be, gently grabs you and pulls you underwater. And for a whale or a dolphin, that's a fun time. They have a breathing capacity of several minutes. Like, their lung capacity will hold them during that space. Underwater, humans die very quickly. And so there's always a separation, at least a barrier between point A and point B, to ensure that you don't accidentally slip in and then Shamu gets a new rag toy. So it's like the cow crushing people against fences they don't realize. Yeah, 100%. Any animal larger than us can hurt you with zero animosity. It's not their fault. It's like when cats play with you and they dig their claws in you. They're not trying to hurt you. If you were a cat, you'd have a lot of fur between point A and point B, and it probably wouldn't hurt that much. But as a human, with a soft, squishy dermis, it's quite painful. The reason I bring this up is because that's pretty much also the same in almost any zoo. So if you see this in any zoo with large animal enclosures, they almost always have two things. A sunken interior, where the actual habitat is, where people can walk above them, safely far away from them, and also observe them more clearly. And two, usually a moat around the interior. This discourages animals from getting too close to the wall, allows them to get close to the wall if they want to, and you have a barrier between point A and point B. It's another hurdle. This is, in fact, what has saved a number of people's lives when they fall into animal enclosures, is the moat actually can be a deterrent for animals to approach. And in certain cases, some animals that are protective will take humans to the moat to shield them from other animals in the enclosure. It's quite interesting. And so this allows animals to see people who are around their enclosures, to become like, I guess we could say, inured to the presence of humans. They adapt to that, as opposed to being like flighty and nervous if they don't see humans at all. Which is why super enclosed shelters with zero opacity are actually pretty unethical, as a rule of thumb. If the animal can't see the people who are going by, they can still hear and smell them. It drives them nuts. Let them see out of their enclosures. And so in this case, it lets them see out of their enclosures, see folks visiting them, and engage with them, and it's edifying for a lot of them. But also, it puts a very nice safety wall of gravity between point A and point B. Animals can break plate glass. They cannot break gravity. Not usually. So, in this case, I'm using art and actual, like, structures from real-life places to design this. Namely, and this is a funny thing. God. What I'm about to say is either going to get me a lot of rage, or a lot of, like, people going, yeah, sure, I believe that. Okay. I like Jurassic World. Put me on the cross. I enjoy it. I think the film is fun. Do I think it's the best film ever? No. It certainly isn't. Is it a fine reimagining of the original Jurassic Park? Sure it is. Is it a little jump the shark at the end? Absolutely. But let's be real. Y'all went to Jurassic Park 4. And you didn't think they were going to jump the shark? At this point, Fonzie's wearing a jetpack, guys. You just got to deal with it. And so, I enjoyed it. But one of the things I enjoyed the most was actually how they treated enclosures. I thought they did the enclosures phenomenally well. And so, I usually think about, like, gorilla enclosure, stuff like that, where they have these larger structures to protect these animals. Or to protect us, usually, more from the animals. Or even things like tigers, or that sort of thing. So I'm looking up a couple of designs that I can use, but one of the best things I like about Jurassic Park is it actually showed how resistant and durable they make these things. They make these things incredibly hard to breach. And I will say, the guys at Jurassic World knew what they were doing when they did that design. They absolutely paid attention. Okay, let's see if I can find good images of it. It is absolutely being a pain in the butt for me today. And I don't know why. Ah, found it. Okay. Guess we have that. Alright. You guys can't see what I'm doing on this end, by the way. I know. I turned this off. So, like, I'll get the camera back on. It's just, I'm going through Google, and you guys know, Google's not safe. Google's never safe, and it's terrifying. Let's see. Dino films always get a thumbs up from me because dinosaurs are fucking cool. I concur with that assessment. I think that's fair. Okay, I think I got everything I need. I think? Yes. Looks like that's all I'm going to require. So, there's this raptor pen, this velociraptor pen, in the original Jurassic Park that they did so good. So good, oh my god. Bam. Okay. So, the design is a terrible place to store an animal over a long time, especially when you consider, like, the space, like, that velociraptors roam. Again, they're probably like tigers and lions. They have a very wide range to roam. But, you know, besides the scale of this being absolutely fucking ridiculous. Now, as a transfer site between point A and point B, where you have animals come in one way, they're usually, like, this would be where they would be processed. So, in this case, where you would bring an animal in, usually towards the front here, they would go through these double doors, exactly, as a holding zone. So it comes in, the animals are medicated, if they're being prepped for surgery or any kind of veterinary work, they would be assessed for their behavior, that kind of thing. This is like the perfect place for that. If you're getting ready to transport them over a longer distance, an enclosure like this would be perfect to get from point A to point B. But then, Jurassic World takes this concept and runs with it. And we get the Raptor Research Arena. That's technically the term that they use, the Raptor Research Arena. I'm quoting their wiki here, because I went to the wiki for the art. And so, in fact, let's see if I can go to the bottom and see if they have any good art on the bottom. Do they not? Nope, they don't. It figures. Okay. So the Raptor Research Arena is, like, literally perfectly designed as the sort of modern day equivalent of what we would consider a, like, large big cat shelter or big cat enclosure. It's still designed to be too hostile. For the record, it's meant to be an adversarial space. If we were talking about what they actually had there, double or triple the size. They're like, I'm gonna be real with you. Make it wide. It's gotta be bigger. If the animal can, I think the exact, like, the rule of thumb is an animal needs to be able to walk for about 15 minutes and still be able to find new places to go. If the animal cannot go between like 5 to 15 minutes without hitting the edge of their enclosure, they will go fucking nuts. And so the raptors are basically the Hannibal Lecter of the dinosaurs in Jurassic World and in the Jurassic Park franchise. So this sort of makes sense that they're like, yes, we would like raptors, specifically for what was originally intended to be a military project and a research project, because InGen is just every stupid corporation in science fiction looks at Weyland-Yutani, please stop. And so this is kind of that same area. Research arena with raptors, RAR for short. They really missed a trick. They did. That one's so good, RAR. So the RAR, here we got. This makes sense for the purposes of terminid breeding. So, terminids themselves don't actually live in these super enclosed spaces, I don't think. Terminids actually live underground. So, we only have seen, like, terminid burrowing happen recently. Let's see if I can find a good image of it. Terminid breach. Let's see if I can find a good image of it. Okay. I'm going to open this and I'm going to mute it. Okay. So, it's not really showing it, but they have like terminid bug holes and stuff. And that's where primarily they come from. And at first, everyone was like, that's weird that they just sort of grow underground. And they do, actually. They have giant nests underground. But we don't ever go that far, because they're kind of like ants. They sort of seal their holes up behind them. And now we've finally gone completely underground. We've seen how big their underground complexes can be. This is a surface-level bug hole enclosure. This is a pretty standard light to medium sized bug hole, or light to medium sized like bug nest. And if you notice, there's no eggs above ground. All the terminids literally scuttle out of these holes. So I like the idea that in order to farm the terminids, what they've done is created an underground enclosure, which they then have artificial tunnels under there reinforced with metal, preventing them from breaking their way out, which are designed to sort of naturally funnel them up to the surface. They have a large chamber underground where they can grow and the eggs can be hatched and that kind of thing. But here, this whole thing's sole purpose is to let Terminids come out and walk around, sort of explore, and then when it's time, they're lured into an enclosure and, well, juiced. That's the best way I would describe it. Maybe pressed, I don't know. Cold pressed Terminid juice. So we're going to be running with this as like the aesthetic that we're going for here. So I'm going to do this from an aerial view, like a slightly aerial view here. Okay. This gives us our very strong sort of... I really like the octagonal shape because it gives you maximum visibility. And so this works pretty well. And we can literally just take this and duplicate it again to get the interior and the exterior walls. We'll expand it a little further out that way, so that this more or less matches. Okay, cool. So we have this. We now need to sort of cut a hole in it. Cool. And now we can just grab the whole thing and duplicate it. And expand it a little wider. Okay, now we take that, expand the size a little more. About right. Perfect. And we're just going to pull this forward a little bit. Cool. So we've got this. We're gonna actually take this, the interior here. And I feel like the exterior we can probably take and like reduce the opacity of it a little bit. There we go. Cool. Alright, now let's actually get to the drawing part of it. I'm gonna call this Terminid Barn Interior. Okay, cool. So I want to have like a large overhanging research section designed to literally observe them from a distance. Terminid farms are designed to get element E710, or nowadays they're also getting element E711. Yes, I'm pretty sure they intended the joke. Helldivers is very self-aware and very funny. And so the idea of this is very much not for the benefit of the Terminids. They are an exploitable resource as far as Super Earth is concerned. And honestly, as far as most of the Meridians are concerned, they're here to farm. They're not really here for the convenience of the animal. An actual farmer gives a damn about their, like, flock or their crop or what have you. But here we're talking about a really oppressive political regime that literally tells everyone that if it's not human, it's not a person and thus doesn't deserve your respect. So I can't imagine they've established many what we would call creature comforts for these things. Okay, so we've got that. I want to have some fences that go a little higher so they can be seen inside. And then that'll go to the edge here. Okay, and now we can start erasing some stuff and cleaning some of this up just a little bit. Okay. Looking good. And we're just going to have this going straight up because it's just a giant concrete box on the far side. And I'm just going to erase the exterior here. Cool. Alright, that works for us. We get to the exterior of the Terminid barn. And I want to make sure we erase these parts because these are going to be solid concrete walls. They're not really made to be visible through. Cool. That works. Alright, and then we can sort of get into this part here. Erase this since this is going to be the door. And we'll do the same thing to the exterior of the Terminid barn. Cool. So you got this large enclosure space here. Now, Super Earth has turrets. I've seen them used several thousand times on me and other Helldivers. I feel like this is a great place for them to be used a little more effectively. This is where I'm going to sort of go in here and sort of mess with the terrain a little bit. And first to do that, we're just gonna clean some of these lines up a little bit. Okay. So we're just gonna go with a very simple sort of reinforced concrete block style design. Super Earth is a very brutalist design style for anything that isn't made for people. So this feels like it's right in keeping with the ruthless aesthetic of Super Earth's disgusting design habits, and I love it. We're going pretty good here. We're going to pull this down here. This block has a little lip on it to reinforce it against bugs that are digging, because Terminids love to dig. It's one of their favorite things to do. Literally, they're built for it. Much like termites, they're very, very good at preventing people from, you know, getting all the way deep into their hives by their hives just being so ludicrously deep. Here we go. And we'll do this here. Okay, then we just sort of pull that out on the side. We've already got ourselves a pretty decent enclosure shape going here. Okay, so now I'm just going to take a couple of other elements here. Now there's one thing that's really cool that I saw and I really wanted to show off, which is this tiger-like tunnel. This is actually at a zoo. I can't remember where. I think it's in Taiwan. It's either Taiwan or it's Thailand. It's one of the two. But it looks so cool. And I love this idea of, like, you can walk through the enclosure. I don't think it's a good idea to do. I'm not sure how healthy it is for tigers who are very ruthless predators. And while they can be very fun and affectionate animals, I'm not sure how psychologically healthy it is for them to encounter people, like, running through their enclosure and their, ostensibly, their territory repeatedly. But the effect is very cool. It's very much like a shark tunnel in an aquarium. I kind of want to have that. So I'm thinking what we'll do is there'll be like a processing facility off to the side. Maybe there's even like an observation space, like right under here. Where they can just sort of watch. And get to see the animals in their environment, see the Terminids in their natural environment. Do their research, that kind of thing. Now, as far as I understand, Terminids, for the most part, see via pheromones and scent. A lot of Terminids don't have very visible eyes. I'm sure they have eyes, but I'm not sure how much they rely on them as much as they rely on seismic sense and stuff. So making sure that Terminids don't, you know, just bust the interior this open, I'm sure is a very novel struggle for these guys. This feels like a very entertaining challenge to take on from an engineering standpoint. I'm sure someone from the Ministry of Science is super eager to do it. So we're going to have really heavily reinforced bars over the top. There we go. We have this really super thick polystyrene plates, polyurethane plate going through here. And then we do the same thing on the other side. And down the middle. And it's almost kind of like NASA's blast shields. If you ever seen NASA's observation panels on the original launch site, they actually had like these really thicked out glass plates. If you've ever been inside the launch center, the windows on like NASA's glass's observation windows, they're like almost a foot thick. Because they're dealing with shockwave forces that are approaching those of nuclear weapons. Saturn V technically had roughly the same explosive force as one of the bombs dropped on Japan. Like, that's how destructive Saturn V could be if it malfunctions. And they wanted to make sure all the researchers and scientists watching and helping them lift off didn't get, you know, vaporized if anything went south. And I feel like it's the same thing here. Terminids aren't quite nuclear, like, strong, but they're still durable enough where you gotta respect them. Especially if they spawn something as big as a charger. I feel that in order for them to properly farm these animals, they probably do most of the quote-unquote farming via drone. Drones are light, they don't smell like anything, and if Terminids are conditioned to not treat them as a threat, that might be a good, like, solution for anyone trying to keep these animals alive and profit off of them. I feel like this is where we start getting into the origin of the TRF, which is the Terminid Restoration Alliance. And I feel like them inventing these drones and then realizing, like, hey, these drones are not viewed as a threat. We could probably use these to communicate. And Super is like, we don't really want to communicate with, you know, these things. We want to turn them into juice. And, you know, scientists be scientists and go, that's actually not ethical. We shouldn't do that. And then the next thing you know, the Gestapo are asking you a lot of questions and telling you to face the wall. There we go, and I'm going to put a dividing point between here, too. We're going to put a pylon in the middle. Just break up the size and the scope of this thing. The same thing on the interior here. That's much better. And then we can literally do the same thing back here. Dead middle. Cool. So you've already got ourselves a pretty good Terminid pen, I would dare say. The difference is I think this thing would be largely handled by, like, actual people. And so we have this underground area, and there's a processing part. Usually there's, like, a way to get in and out that's pretty easy. But in this case, because you're dealing with Terminids, I suspect the way in and out is super resilient, ultra rugged, and designed not to fail. So it's probably like the same kind of giant blast doors that a lot of facilities use in Super Earth, where it's just these giant, super thick doors. That are really just designed to not fail at all. The exterior gates are really more to keep, like, people out than to keep Terminids in. But I think the effect is largely the same. So now we need to have a I can't remember what it's called, but like there's a part of a pen. Let's see, it's cattle ranch path for animals to go to slaughter. I always forget the name of it. There's like a specific term for it. It's gonna drive me nuts. There's like a specific term for it, and it's gonna just drive me absolutely crazy. Here we go. Shoots and... okay, races. That's what they're called. They're called races. So this is one of those places where you actually can basically take an animal and just open a gate, and the animals will naturally sprint through it. Because they'll find a new place and like, oh shit, we gotta go here. So we can use that, create a race channel here that's really durable. We want it to be super sturdy. Because animals do go out here. Like, the front doors, they're not meant to go out of. But here they are. So we'll have auto turrets on there. And now we can begin hitting all this with coloration. Basically, this channel goes out through here. It's open air, so ranchers can see where the terminids are going. Okay, goes about here, rotates around. And then it would go to the slaughterhouse in the back. And then we'll just have like a meat processing plant style facility towards the back here. Where terminids go in and they don't come out. And then we'll have a couple of silos over here. Because we also know people eat terminids in Super Earth society. There's apparently a place... I can't remember the name of the damn thing, but there's literally a place that sells roasted terminid. Which, that tracks, they're crustaceous, so... Or they're like, they're kind of decapods, in a way. Like decapods insects, depending on the individual one. So, and I'm just saying, a lot of people eat lobster. I don't think it's ethical, as someone who worked in seafood. But I'm not gonna yuck someone else's delicious yum. And I will admit, lobsters are very delicious. So we're gonna have these tubes that come out, and these go straight into the silos to store the liquid. Rupture Farms, making me think of Abe's Odyssey games, Rupture Farms. Oh man, I love Oddworld. It's one of my favorite game franchises, hands down. I love him. Also, I'm also a big fan of Oddworld Inhabitants, the guys who make it. Fun fact, I don't know if a lot of folks are aware of it, but if you're curious what Oddworld is about, and Oddworld 2 especially, I think Oddworld 2 and Oddworld 1, Oddworld Inhabitants uploaded the entirety of their game's cutscenes. The entirety of their game's cutscenes to their YouTube channel. Like, all edited for clarity and with professional grade work, and it's excellent. It's so good. They did that for Abe's Odyssey, and it's... Abe's... Yeah, it is Abe's Exodus, I guess? The second one? It's so good. And I'm so happy about that. Guess we can remove some of this stuff now. Because we're getting into that zone where you wouldn't be able to see much of this. Ever played Stranger's Wrath? I have. I have. A Steef protects the water. A Steef protects the valley. Yes, I have not forgotten. Stranger's Wrath was great. And then up top. And I kind of want to have something horrifying in the background, you know? Something truly horrific. Because they get filtered through here. And I kind of like the idea that they have like a gantryway above and a couple of people walking it. Also, I'm not gonna lie, my uncle and I used to play those games together all the time too, so... Now, all the time, I can just hear, this is Reptue Farms. They say it's the biggest meatpacking plant on Oddworld. And it's just, it's always in my head now. It'll never, never be gone. I'm just gonna have 2 turrets here. 2 automated turrets. And in the back, I want to have something suitably gruesome. I kind of like the idea of it just being like a giant press. With like a giant piston on top. And they literally just sort of fresh squeeze the bugs. There we go. Fresh squeezed Terminate juice, just like Ma and Pa used to make. There we go. So that feels pretty good. Hello, hello, follow me. Okay, yeah. Oh man, I used to be able to do all the whistles and everything too. It's been so long. Hello, hello. Wait. Okay. Follow me. I'll be honest, my uncle and I used to do the fart noise button way too much, but I was a very small child and he was the uncle of a very small child, so I'm sure no small part of that was just, let's have fun. Okay, so we're going to start filling in everything that's solid. Just so that way it stands out from the purely white backgrounds. Now, for all the observation platforms and stuff, I want to make sure this is super durable. And probably armed. If anyone is familiar with the Avatar movies of James Cameron Persuasion, not Avatar The Last Airbender or The Last Airbender or whatever monstrosity it was that they called the last ones that they've done because they've never managed to capture what made Avatar The Last Airbender a good show, which was in part that it was animated and doesn't need to be recreated a million times, and that's really my only beef I have. That and hiring a bunch of white folks to play literal indigenous people. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, there's this one part in the movies, this one place in the first movie, and I think it's called, like, Hell's Kitchen is what they call it. And that's kind of what I like about it. That's kind of the idea I'm going for here. Super reinforced. The farting was such an important part of the games. The funny thing is, the farts had to be used every time you got to, like, a singing, like, puzzle. So it was like... Whistle, 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 fart. And it just... Oh, man. It was basically Zelda in that respect, but they just did farts. Which is weirdly funny to me. No, not weirdly funny. It's reasonably funny. Of course it's reasonably funny. It's farts. Okay, let's get the windows really dark here. I want to tint the hell out of these. And we're also going to tint the front of this so that it's clearly downward facing. There we go. We're just going to fill all that in. They say it's the biggest meat packaging plant on Oddworld. They say it's the biggest meat packaging plant here on Meridia. It's definitely not. This is nowhere near the biggest, I'm sure. The biggest are ludicrously huge. Super Earth has a thing for hypercorporations. I don't know how else to describe it, really. Just kind of their thing. So we're going to have another pair of turrets on the outside here. Because Super Earth loans those things out to so many people. I'm sure they're like, oh yeah, it's for farming. And they're like, oh yeah, of course. You want the AP variety? You never know how thick those Terminid riots can get. Oh yeah, we should probably get armor-penetrating rounds, shouldn't we, honey? Yeah, we should. Like, it's literally that kind of conversation. And we're also going to put the shadows under the lip here. And we'll do the same thing under the top. Nice. Alright, cool. And this exterior side should be the darkest because it's directly facing away from the sun. And we'll do the same thing here with these. There we go. We can sort of do that a little bit. Beautiful. Okay, so we've got a pretty good deal going on here. Let's start getting the interior of the interior done. There's no live action movie embossing, say. No, there is not. There never will be. And also we're going to get on in here. Darken that because it's facing away from the sun a little more. We're going to do the same thing here as we get towards the end of our stream, because we have been going for quite some time, and I appreciate everybody's patience. And here we go. Cool. So that works. We'll do the same thing on this end, because we need to make sure this is the part that's facing away from the sun. Now we're going to get the interior. I'm going to merge these two together, because that was the wrong level I drew on. Whoops-a-daisy. I was going to range a guess this is some sort of holding area or reinforced storage yard. Yes, it is. Someone does not engage with Helldivers 2 at all. I really love all this. Why, thank you. I appreciate this. I appreciate that so much. Hold on. It did the thing. There we go. Yes, this is a Terminid Ranch. As of Super Earth, specifically for the one part of Meridia that I'm working on, which is New Chimgan, which is a frontier rim colony on the outside of Meridia's larger settlements. So that's kind of what I'm going for here. So now I just got to get the weird grody area. And I'll just call this the compound. Compound, fences. Alright. So now we just got to get all the weird grody Terminid stuff going on around here. So Terminids tend to come out of large holes in the ground, and again, this one in particular has been specifically cultivated to allow Terminids sort of emerge out as they want, where they're sort of allowed to roam and do whatever they need to. They don't really care much about the conditions that these animals live in, or these creatures, because let's be real, Terminids are almost sentient, if not completely sentient, as a species, which is a thing we've learned over and over and over again, and every time they've told us to underestimate them, and we have, they've done something horrific, and it was all our fault. So, I'm not making that mistake anymore. Okay, I'm just saying, Terminids are smart. They're really, really blinking smart. Okay, and then we're just going to sort of fill this area in where the sun is naturally going to shine on. Probably going to have like a couple of tires and stuff here and there. Just the fun of it, just for some edification for the animals, you know. Like the one thing that they throw in there for them. Probably have a trough or something to feed them from, or at least water them. So we're going to have a couple, like, watering spots here and there around there. Sort of let them come in and drink as they choose. I'm almost going with a very cattle sort of setup. I've seen this before where there's like, it's a gravity-fed kind of feeder. Oh boy, Meridia, nothing bad ever happened there. Nope, of course nothing bad ever happened there. It's where Gentry was born. Why would anything bad happen there? Her boy came from there. Everything's great on Meridia. And at this point in the comic, everything is still great on Meridia. No one has any reason to think otherwise. Why would you? Perish the thought. So these Terminids tend to live in these big burrows. Naturally very rocky. Kind of have these little spore things. I suspect they probably purge the area of spores a lot. And I mean a lot. So you have more of these turrets here on Overwatch. Just in case anything happens. I want the interior compound. I want a little, like, railing here where folks can watch on either side. Then we have a guy over here with a rifle, just sort of watching. There we go, looking pretty good. Wouldn't a Terminid farm without your standard issue flamethrower farm tools? Yeah, exactly. That makes me just love Gentry more. Aw, thank you. Fun fact, I actually decided to make Gentry come from Meridia before Meridia was cool. I literally threw a dart when I was first working on the comic. And then everything happened on Meridia and I was like, oh. Oh no, it's still going. Oh, this is gonna be so good. And it just never stopped. Oh, I didn't mean to torture Gentry that much, but at this point I'm too committed to pull back, and it's very funny. So, alright, so we've got that. We've got our Terminid holes. And now we're just gonna start doing a little bit of the shading on all the rocks and stuff where we can. This gives a little depth and structure to the shapes over here. There we go. Gonna add just a little bit of like, it's like dirt and stuff and some roughed up terrain. Again, I love the idea that they just sort of have like tires and stuff that they throw them. It's like, yeah, it's time for the Terminids to play. Right, somebody get the tires. And this is someone, again, coming from someone who worked at SeaWorld briefly, like, as an artist and saw a lot of what they did, and, you know, edifying an animal is really important on many stages, even if you're just farming them. Animals are smart, and animals get pissed. And if you don't keep them busy and entertained, they will make it your problem. They will hurt you. Even if they don't want to, they'll get pissy and upset, and they will hurt you. And you will have earned it, because for God's sake, if you're gonna farm a cow, if you're gonna slaughter it, at very least make its life pleasant before it dies. And if not, it will make your life short before it dies. And you will have earned it. Okay, so we've got the shadow of the actual structure here. And then we're going to do this. And this is going to cast probably the biggest shadow of anything here, because it is the tallest structure. So we'll say it gets all the way to out here, right behind that rock. And then on the other side, we sort of do the same thing, where it casts this shadow all the way around. That's a little sharp, but it's fine. We can work with it. So this is a little bit of the homegrown industry of Meridia, before everything went crazy. Before, as the kids say, Meridia was cool. Which the kids don't say that, because Meridia was a nightmare for everyone, especially the Meridians. Poor Meridians. They didn't ask for their planet to become a torpedo. Or a bug nest. Or a black hole. Or basically anything, really. They are pretty blameless in all this. Except for the farming animals part, in a horrific way that any sane farmer would look at and say, wow, that's really messed up to do to an animal you're going to eat. Okay. See, just a small kid on the outside of the Terminated enclosure. Can I pet the dog? Speaking of someone who grew up around horses, a moo boy mom's gelding especially. Yes, keep the animals entertained. Mm-hmm. Yep, 100%. There was one time. This is a fun little story. There was one time I actually went through a bullpen. Once. It wasn't on a rodeo. It wasn't on any of that. So, I'm an Eagle Scout. Way back in... No, I shouldn't say way back in the day. Once an Eagle Scout, always an Eagle Scout. I was a Boy Scout back in the day. I was, I think, life rank at that point, which is like second. It's right below Eagle. I sort of slummed it at life rank for almost 4 years. I could have been Eagle so much sooner, but I wanted to stay a Boy Scout, and I had it in my head that when I graduated as an Eagle, I was no longer going to be a Boy Scout. That's not how it works, by the way. I was very dumb. Continuing. So at one point we had to go to this survival camp. The Starlink camp out. Part of how you graduate as an Eagle is you gotta do this. And so when we went, the survival camp trip we went on, our Scoutmaster's name was Mr. Thompson. We all called him Thor, because the man had a mighty mountain man beard down to here. And he had a voice that could somehow cut through thunderstorms. And so, when we were going to this camping trip, one of his buddies said, hey, you can totally use the area around my ranch. Like, you'll want to do it outside of the pastures, so there's no poop, but you're welcome to. And so, in order to get outside, though, you need to go through the bullpen. It's the only way to do so, without going through literally miles and miles of pasture land. Pasture land filled with... you know, cow shit. Manure. And we're going to spend days in our clothes. And it's going to be wet and muddy, and that's the last thing you want on you when you're in a camping trip and you can't change your clothes. So, we went through the bullpen. Now, at the time, most of the bulls had been moved out, but there was one that was being very stubborn, and it didn't want to leave. And so, you know, Mr. Thompson turned his friend who's the ranch hand is like, they okay? And he's like, yeah, he's kind of an asshole. Send them through, like, 6 at a time, just to make sure you don't piss him off. And so, you know, you had the farm hands on the one hand trying to keep the bull, like, calm and try to coax him towards the exit while the first scouts start going through. And I was with the second batch of scouts with one of the patrols. And boy, oh boy, that bull took one look at us, the second group, and decided that was his time to murder kids. And he motored towards us. And I remember our scoutmaster planting his feet, turning around, and just shouting, you know, the yeah, that thing, like as loud as he could. I don't want to do it to the actual volume because I have neighbors, but it was a full-on bellow. And he just planted his feet and held his hand out, and that bull fucking stopped 2 feet away from him. And we were all, like, getting ready to sprint for the other side. Mr. Thompson's like, don't run. Go to the gate. Go through. Send the next batch of boys through. And everything else went off without a hitch. The bull went into the enclosure after that. We were the only ones that it charged. But man, it taught me you respect animals. Even animals you would normally never consider as dangerous or you would think of as, like, largely not a threat. Like, you know, bulls and cattle are largely benign animals. They really don't want to hurt you. 9 times out of 10, they want to be left alone. Let them graze. Let them do their thing. Let them reproduce. You know, let them enjoy their brief, beefy lives. And, you know, you don't really think about the fact that the thing that's going to be staring at you from the dinner table later used to be a several 100-pound animal. And in some cases, possibly several tons. And that even its slightest whim to hurt you will end your life. It teaches you something. I've never worked on a farm, but I now live near a lot of them. I've always lived within a reasonable distance of a fair few of them. I know how crazy that shit is. So, yeah. Also, gelding, yikes. That can't be fun to enjoy. That can be fun to watch. Oof. Their briefy lives. Some people really do just have a way with animals that animals understand. Yeah, I imagine Mr. Thompson's way with animals was reminding them that they are destined to end up on his burger. He has a very commanding presence. I don't know if Mr. Thompson is still alive. It's been nearly 20 years since that happened, and Mr. Thompson was already full white beard, 60 years old. If he's around, he's in his 80s. So I hope that, I hope Mr. Thompson, wherever you are, you're doing good. I hope your son is doing good. I know one of his son at one point actually fell off horseback at one point, broke his back. He, I do believe, recovered fully, thankfully. But yeah, something about living on a farm, living with animals that just, it's a level of risk and a level of connection to life that a lot of people don't normally get. You know, assuming it's an actual, like, farm and it's not one of those, like, hyper farms owned by megacorps that are basically just processing plants for animals to stand around until they die. Most actual, like, farms really give a damn about the animals that they take care of. To quote the King of the Hill, you know, animals stand in a pen, they barely have any time to go outside, makes them taste terrible. But it's true. It's a respect thing, and it pays off mechanically, too. Like, it's a practical consideration. And while I'll be the first person to say I think that the majority of organic food is unfortunately kind of mostly hokum, because the majority of organic food is actually just kind of very easy to replicate the effect of without actually committing to many meaningful positive changes for the animals. But the ideology behind it isn't a bad one. Like, the better you treat your animals, the better you treat your food, the better you'll be. Alright, we're going pretty good. Okay, so far we're getting some definition finally on this. Now, I don't normally bust out, like, white edge highlighting like this on fine detail work, because usually it kind of contradicts what I'm trying to do with a sketch. But in this instance, because we're doing so much in the way of steel girders, it's actually important, I think. Helps prevent stuff from just blurring together back there. So we have our hoses that go up and into that. To get to the terminid juicer, which, yes, I suspect that's how they process them. They literally just compress them. Not a very nice thought. But again, this is Helldivers. It is as politically nuanced as Starship Troopers is. So, yeah. This feels right. This feels despicably right. Pa, we gotta get the Terminids into the juicing barn. It's almost time for the juicing. Son, I hate how much the word juicing factors into our lives. Well, actually, thinking about it, this is Meridia. And that means in my headcanon, at least a sizable part of Meridia and the Cyberstani folks that lived on Meridia have an Australian accent. So I suppose it would be like... The proper way to describe it would be like... Son, I very much hate that this is a very large part of our vocabulary, and I wish it would stop. Here we go. So yeah. Anything farmed to even the minimalist capacity will have an amount of impact. The only way to have true organic is to hunt and gather. Honestly, that's not even an option anymore. Have we been looking at my beautiful face this whole time? I've been doodling this whole time! Son of a gun! Alright, well there it is. We're still going. But anyway, we're gonna save this fast so I don't lose any more detail. But, ferment some in alcohol, you got bug brew. Yes. As I understand, you actually can't even hunt and gather organic anymore. Since the start of the Anthropocene, we've detected particle plastic basically anywhere on Earth. Like, literally everywhere. From the deepest parts of the ocean to the very most tippy top of mountains, it's everywhere now. There's literally nowhere to hide from the plastic. So the idea of quote-unquote true organics is very hard to maintain. In fact, fun fact, that's the reason why in the United States it's actually against the law to sell organic seafood. You literally can't. The oceans are no longer organic. At least by any definition of seafood in the US. By organic in the US. Which is kind of horrifying to think about. That that's how extensive it's gotten. It's a nice face, yes. Okay, here we go. So we've got the... We're going to do the tops of the walls here. And I'm just going to sort of have these going back. And I know I don't need to do this much work prepping for, like, the webcomic. You guys don't see 90% of this stuff. But I do. And just in case I ever do need to take you guys to a Terminid farm or something in the webcomic, I want to make sure I know what one looks like. I want that. And then we're just going to sort of go in there. And then we're just going to sort of catch the top of this. Okay, looking pretty good. As a former DM, I love world building stuff like this. Hell yeah. No, I feel you on that. Same. It's half of the fun. Okay, then we have the gate, which is sort of outlined like that. Cool. So now automatically we can start seeing shapes taking form here. Nice, nice. It's looking good. It's looking good. And we'll do the same thing here. And then we're just going to do the top of this where the light would hit it. Take this over here to this side. I almost forgot. I got to get the tanks. That's important. Then up here, we get our railings. We get the top of the tower. And then we sort of catch the edge of where the light would hit the windows, and specifically the reinforced paneling on it. Looking good so far. Shapes, I'm loving the shapes. It's the shapes! Also, Bardo, my buddy! How you doing, pal? Good to see you. I added the entire faction to Tomb of Annihilation when I ran it, complete with hierarchy and its own motivations. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. How you doing today, buddy? I hope you're doing well. And then we're just going to go over here. We're going to catch the edge of these bug feeders. These bug waterers, bug feeders. Okay, and we're just going to sort of have where the light will reflect off of stuff. And we do the same thing here. And then we just sort of pull that through, and it's looking great, and I'm pleased with how this is turning out. Okay. And now I'm just going to go over to the tire here. We're going to catch the tire. And we all know what the tire is good for. Let those bugs out. Let them kick the tire around. Gnawing on it a bit. Let them get their anxiety, their stress out. And the best part is, it's just a great thing to do with an old, like, wagon tire. if your old car, your old truck just sort of dies, and you're like, well, I can't use the tire anymore. But the cows will have fun with this thing. You sort of hand it to them when they turn it into their ball. Although usually you might want to go with a barrel more, because barrels are actually safer and it's less likely to hurt the animal, but again, these people are literally going to cold press juice an insect. I don't think they're particularly cared with the long-term endurance and well-being of these animals. No, I'm going to just yeet it out towards people outside? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Again, very Jurassic Park is what I'm going for this part. I do the same thing here. There we go. We give a little turret parts as well. And we give the outline in white. And just like that, we should have our Terminid ranch. Hell yeah. That, my friends, is a pretty good Terminid ranch. Oh, hold on. We gotta get the turrets up here. Turrets! You can't contain super dangerous bug insects that you, I would say eat, but they do eat them, but primarily juice them. You can't keep those bug insects juiceable if they're not contained with turrets. Going for a slightly more, I guess this would be like a almost Team Fortress 2 style turret, but it'll do. It reads as a turret. Cool. Instantly, we're all set. That, my friends, is a Terminid, I guess, yeah, just a little, like, Terminid farm. Terminid farm. I feel pretty good about that, guys. That's a lot of work done in a couple of hours, and I feel great. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you all had a good time. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I am going to pop off and get to doing some art today. Bardo, it's so good to see you again, buddy. Much love. Truly, I'm really happy to have you. And for everyone who tuned in, please remember, like, comment, and please subscribe. I appreciate you. Set it so that I show up. There's like 2 different settings. It's like personal settings and all updates. Flip it to all so you actually get to see when I upload and go live. And I promise you, if you subscribe, it makes a huge difference. We're at a very small stage in this channel. I'm still at 90 subscribers. I have a long way to go before I can even begin to think about making partner. That's not even in, like, that's not even right now in the cards. So prove me wrong. Help me get to that. And in the meantime, I hope you guys have a great day. Huge thank you to all my incredible, awesome patrons, by the way. Ampersand, Heinrich, and Atlas, you guys are great. Thank you as always. Likewise, also, my incredible folks at patreon.com/thelast at level 2. And that would be the incredible Necronomulus and Souls Rolls. So, if you guys want to support me, you go to patreon.com/thelast Link is inside the description. And a link is also inside the chat right now. Go click that, follow it up, follow me there. You can read the entirety of Gentry Delane No Fascist for free. And on top of that, if you support me, you get to see stuff 2 weeks early and get some exclusive stuff like wallpapers and unique art just for you guys. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate everyone who tunes into these. I'm the last Omnitect, your favorite robot American. And I'll see you out there, Voyagers. Peace.